Hello, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. So in this video, I need to close out my November budget. So that is what we're going to do. I already closed it out, but I wanted to go over it with you guys because I did something a little bit different than my October budget closeout for November. So last month in October, I closed out my budget by paycheck. So I did the first half of the month, which was the 1st through the 15th, and then the last half of the month, which was the 16th through the 31st. And this works perfectly fine if I was in the max budget planner, because that budget planner is set up for you to budget by paycheck. So since I'm in the light planner, this planner is set up so that it has transaction logs, so you can just log your transactions as you go. But typically I don't do that. Whenever I have a moment, I'll go ahead and write down my transactions. So the dates are all out of order. For the most part, they go in order, but as you can see here, just so I don't forget, I have a section for my daycare and all of my gas for the month, and then I start my transactions, just so these are on separate cards. So just so I don't forget to capture them, I automatically set them up at the beginning of my transaction log. So you can see that the dates are already out of order. So in October, it was a little bit more difficult for me to close out my monthly budget. So this time in November, I set up a budget closeout prep sheet where basically I use the note sheet that's at the end of every month in the drill down budget planner, and I divided it into 4 columns because in the light version you get 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there is another transaction log sheet. So technically you get 6 transaction logs, but I took mine out because I only need 3 to 4 transaction logs, so I took my extra sheet out. But what I did was I made 4 columns so that I can close out each page. So that is my trigger to go ahead and start closing out my transactions per sheet. So what I'm saying is, once I get to the bottom of a transaction log, I'll go ahead and total up all of the transactions on that sheet, and then I'll go ahead and categorize them in column 1, and I put number 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then I numbered the pages at the bottom 1, 2, 3, and 4, just so I know which page I'm talking about when I enter the columns. So I hope that made sense, but that's what I tried for November, and I find that that works much better for me in the light version since I don't log my transactions in chronological order. So that is what I did there. And then I don't have a totals column because what I do is I'll go ahead and add up the categories across the pages, and then I'll put the total over here because these are my actuals. I do a month-end review of actuals compared to actuals, so I'm doing October actuals to November actuals. And that really is the easiest for me because if I was to do budgeted versus actuals, I would have to track way more stuff than I have to when I'm comparing actuals to actuals. So for example, if I was comparing my November budget to my November actuals, I have cash envelopes and sinking funds in order for my, so a quick little, I need another pen apparently. This pen ain't got no act right. Okay, so budget and actuals. So let's move that out of the way. So right now what I compare are my actual expenses. So this is just the current month. So this is going to be November. So all I'm doing is comparing expenses for November compared to October's expenses. If I was, and that's it, I'm not comparing income, I'm not comparing how much I'm pulling out of sinking funds, I'm not comparing any of that. I'm just comparing what I spent this month versus what I spent last month. And that's across the board, from monthly bills, what I spent out of cash envelopes, all of that. So it's easiest to compare that. If I was to compare budgeted versus actuals, for one, I would need to compare my budgeted expenses compared to my actual expenses. But this is kind of misleading because if I am spending money out of my sinking funds and my cash envelope on top of my paycheck, when I go to do my budgeted versus actuals at month end, it's not going to be right unless I track all of this in my budgeted section. For example, it's Christmas time, so let's say we got a gift for $100. $90. So I had a sinking fund for Christmas gifts, right? And I used $90 out of my sinking fund because that's all I had, but I'm still short $10 towards the $100 gift. If I pull $10 out of my paycheck, that is perfectly fine. But at the end of the month, I'm tracking my expenses. So this $100 gift is going to be in my transaction log. And then if I'm only tracking what I spent out of my paycheck, then this $90 that you pulled out of the sinking funds is not going to be captured. It's going to look like you budgeted $10 for gifts, but you spent $100. So your budget is going to be off. Like, you're going to be way over budget. In reality, you weren't, because you pulled $90 from your sinking funds. So unless you count your paycheck and your sinking funds and your cash envelopes and whatever source of income that you're using to pay all of your expenses throughout the month, your month-end budget is going to be off. So, and that's assuming that you're tracking every single thing that's you spend money on. If you're only tracking the expenses that you pay for out of your paycheck, so like, for example, you bought a gift and $100 came out of your paycheck, then that's perfectly fine. And then you're doing it separate for where anything that comes out of your sinking funds and out of your cash envelopes, you're not tracking because you already set that money aside. That's fine as well. Then your budget will be okay at month end. But I just kind of wanted to go over that really quickly because I do see that a lot in month end closeouts where people aren't understanding why they're so much over budget, because you're only counting what's coming out of your paycheck versus what you're spending across the board. And they're not capturing the sinking funds and the cash envelopes money that they put with their paycheck in order to pay for their expenses throughout the month. So I just opted out of all of that because it will mean way more tracking for me. I don't want to track what comes out of my sinking funds and my cash envelopes if the money that I'm using is going towards what that sinking fund and cash envelope is for, as well as I'm not pulling any money from my paycheck in order to fund any purchases that I make out of my sinking funds and cash envelopes. So that's why I compare the current month actuals to last month actuals, because I don't need to worry about what I budgeted matching up with actuals. And then every quarter I do compare what I budgeted for that quarter versus what I spent. And that's when I'll do like this whole process, and it'll be a little bit easier because at that point I'm only comparing categories. So that'll make more sense once I do my video on my standard of living tracker that's in my drill down budget planner. But I think you guys get the point. If not, leave a comment. I'll be happy to go into it a little further. But I wrote on my little paper. I was going to use this paper to like keep me on track, but I wrote on it. Don't want to distract you guys and myself. So let's go over the month-end review for November. Okay, so once I added up the totals on the budget closeout prep sheet for each category, I went ahead and plugged it in over here in the November actuals column. So going down, for our 4 walls, we spent $3,090.89, and we were 14% over budget, and that's because we did have to pay for 2 water bills in the month of November because October the bill was generated late, so they pulled the payment late, which was perfectly fine because we already had the money set aside, but it just, both October and November got paid in November, which is perfectly fine. And then our pest control also came out in the month of November. So 14% for our 4 walls. I know what it is and it makes perfect sense to me, so not worried about it. Clothes, we spent $120.33 compared to last month. We were 61% under budget, and that makes sense because in October I was buying a lot of clothes for the kids for like the cold season, so that definitely makes sense, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Food and consumables, we spent $1,101.26, and we were over budget 6%. Only being over 6% in the month of November when there's Thanksgiving and we hosted this year, I'm perfectly fine with that because 6% is not bad at all, but I am expecting it to go back down closer to the 1,000 mark, even though we did set aside funds for Thanksgiving. And that tells me, only being over 6%, that the budget that we set for Thanksgiving, which was $200, was a pretty good budget, and we actually can use that same amount for next year, assuming food prices don't go up stupid dumb again next year. Okay, so for gas, we only spent $361.07, and we were under budget by 36%, which makes sense because hubby and I were home a couple more days throughout November. So of course we would be under budget, but I wasn't expecting to be under budget that much. 36%, that's crazy. And we only stayed home for Thanksgiving and Black Friday. So for both of us to sit out for 2 days and have 36% decrease in gas, and that's a testament to how far we drive and how much gas is nowadays. It's crazy. So childcare, we were over budget by 17%, and it was only $19 when at the end of the day. And that's just because I told you guys that the twins moved up to the two-year-old classroom, so that makes sense to me. And it's actually going to be even more in December because I told you guys that the daycare raised overall tuition prices. So I'm expecting us to be over budget when we're comparing actuals just because of that price hike. And then I'm expecting it to even out. Well, actually no, because January we have the material fee due. That's $100 per child, and we do have that saved up. I hit that sinking fund goal, so we're good to go for January. But I am expecting this childcare line to be over budget until February, when it should go back down. Pull-ups, we didn't buy any in October, so we are $173.96 over budget, but that's because we bought pull-ups and wipes and stuff in November, and we need to buy some in the month of December, so I'm okay with that because that is definitely a need. Okay, so debt went up. We were over budget by $25, which is 6% with our budget, and I'm trying to remember why. So I can't remember why, so I'm looking over here on my second page is when I spent this $445. So I'm gonna flip over to my second page and see what all that was, just so I can refresh my memory because it's been a while since I actually did this closeout. So credit card interest, somehow I forgot to pay the full amount and we got charged interest, so that's that. And then it's Nelnet. So Nelnet, which is my husband's student loans, which are deferment, we were trying to pay on those, but with the changes in the daycare, we can no longer afford to pay down his student loans because it's not a necessity. They don't kick in until he's done with med school. So I'm not perfectly okay with not paying that down because it was a goal to pay as much interest as possible while he was in school so that it's not capitalized once he graduates. But I mean, you can only do so much. And then the rest of it is our car loan, which is $256. So we did pay a little bit more in Nelnet because I told you guys that they allocated our payment wrong, so it wasn't allocated to the loans like I wanted it to be. So that is why we were 6% over in debt. Ideally, I was thinking that it would be about the same, so that's why I wanted to look into that. And then for business, on budget with $140. Medical, we were under budget by 100%. We didn't spend anything on medical, so that's fine. Home, we were over 71% because we spent $357 more than October, and that's because we did buy a chest deep freezer. So we did buy a chest deep freezer for Black Friday, so perfectly fine with that. That should go back down in December, but I don't know, I can't really think of anything that I've been buying for the house this month, so I don't know, we'll see. Cars, hubby did get 2 new tires in October, and we didn't have any car maintenance in the month of November, so we were 100% under budget. Professional service, we didn't spend anything in October or November. Beauty services, I did not get my hair done in November, but I did buy some, what did I buy? Beauty services. Where's my beauty services? Oh, on page 2 and 3 is where I have those transactions. So I got my eyebrows done, and then 3. Oh, and then I bought the faux lock hair for my December appointment, so that's what that was, and that is perfectly okay. We were over budget by 32%, but that is perfectly fine. We did spend 32% more than October, and that's perfectly fine. Travel and family fun, we were over budget by 74%, which equates to $394 compared to October. So that's pretty high. So let's look and see what that was. And all of that took place on page 3. So family fun. Oh, it was our son's birthday. So I'm thinking that's what all it was. Yep. Little Caesar Pizza, Stater Brothers, And then is there any travel? Yeah, so we ended up buying pizza and cupcakes and everything for our son to enjoy with his friends in his class. So he really enjoyed that. We didn't end up doing the whole taking him out to race cars and stuff like we wanted to for his birthday because hubby was sick. So we kind of stayed in and we just celebrated him at home. He enjoyed all of his presents. His grandparents came over and visited. So he still enjoyed his birthday, even though it didn't go according to plan. So we're in my travel, family, and fun. So 74%. Oh, sorry. We were under budget 74%. I think I said over budget, but under budget for 74%. And that's perfectly fine because we did celebrate our son's birthday. Social life, we did not go anywhere. In November, we celebrated mostly at home, which is perfectly fine. And then subscriptions and memberships, we were over budget 131% because, I don't know, let's look and see. Oh, we were spending money all throughout the month. So I noticed $4.99 is for the kids subscription. This $22.99 is is Netflix. So I need to look on page 1 and see what this $2.15 is because I'm not really sure. Oh, our Costco membership renewal, and it has to be something else. Oh, and one of my credit cards has an annual fee, so both of those kicked in November. So that's why we were over budget, because we paid those 2 memberships and renewed them for the year, even though the credit card fee is an annual fee. So okay, we did not spend anything on landscaping, nothing for giving in the month of November, nothing towards savings, which isn't exactly true because we do put money towards Bora Bora, $250 every month. So technically that is savings. And that's one of the things that I was thinking about is if I don't spend any money for that month, even though I'm putting it aside, like, do I want to count the money that I'm putting aside towards sinking funds? But I don't think I'm going to do that because once we spend the money, it's going to be double counted. So if I'm counting the money when we put it in sinking funds, then when we go to spend it later on for the year, it's going to look like we did double the amount. So yeah, I'm just going to leave it. I'm not going to track any money that we put in our sinking funds or cash envelopes and didn't spend for that month, because eventually the money will be spent somehow, some way, and it will be captured in a month in review because we spent the money. So that is that, but just know we did put $250 towards savings. And then for hubby, he was over budget 57%. So he spent $94 more than October, which is perfectly fine because I'm sure it was something like books for his classes, which is fine. Kids school, we didn't spend anything. Holidays, we were over budget 32% because, let's see, holidays, we were spending money throughout. So let's see, I did get some Christmas decor. I got a new rug for our front porch. I did buy some dinnerware for Thanksgiving. So a lot of this is probably going to be towards Thanksgiving, since this was November, Thanksgiving dinner. So anything that has to do with the holidays, I put into my holidays category, no matter if it's food, decor, whatever. It's going into holidays because eventually I do want to create a sinking fund for the holidays, and everything that has to do with the holidays, I want to be captured in that category. So even though this was the money we set aside for Thanksgiving dinner, that's technically food. Like I just said, I want to have everything that we spend for the holidays in one category. So what else did we do for holidays? More food for Thanksgiving. And then we did get the kids some stuff for, you have to read between the lines because I don't know if my son is up or not. If you can't read it and you're listening, we took advantage of some Black Friday deals for the kids. So there you go. Alrighty, so we were on holidays. We're almost to the end. Last line is for me, and I was under budget by 30%. And typically, I don't spend a lot in my category unless it's hair, and yep, that's what it was. And yeah, so for the month of November we spent $7,655.12 compared to October we spent $7,460.25. So we were over budget $194.87, which we spent 3% more than we did in October, which for a holiday month and a holiday season, I will take it as a win because we have some perfectly valid reasons why we spent more in the month of November versus October. So I'm going to say that we are still living within our means and we're not going crazy, even though December might tell a different story when it comes to these clothes because, baby, I've been shopping. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this budget closeout and my whole spiel on budgeted versus actual expenses and why closing out your budget may be a little bit more difficult for you if you do budgeted versus actuals. I hope that made sense. If not, again, please drop a question down in the comments and I'll be happy to answer to the best of my abilities. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.